Hey everyone, BreadBoyWeeb here, and this new pack, Blazing Arena, has certainly cemented the meta for the next 6 months minimum. While we got tons of support for different archetypes like Unchained, Volcanic, and Battling Boxer, the entire pack could have been Uno cards and it still would be news because we got Bonfire, which lets you add a level 4 or lower Pyro to hand. This gives Snake Eyes, the already best deck before the pack, a free 1-card combo and extender through a variety of hand traps. Why they thought buffing the best deck significantly was the move in Master Duel, I don't know. But would you believe me if I told you we aren't in a tier 0 format yet? Because don't get me wrong, the top deck right now is Snake Eyes. The deck has 10 1-card starters, has an insane amount of link material, and can casually end on Apo, Barone, and Savage. The deck can play through almost any hand trap and has a strong OTK line with Zealantis. So what even competes with this? In my opinion, there are only 2 decks even in the same ballpark as Snake Eyes, and the first is Labyrinth. The mild consistency hits to the furniture don't really matter in the face of Arius, which not only gives you turn 0 trap disruption, but can also summon your regular guys to the field to gain further advantage. And if your opponent ever responds to any of your Labyrinth cards, it revives itself to either do it again, or be used to make Chaos Angel, Beatrice, or whatever the hell you want. Yeah, it being level 6 as well gives it so many options. Labyrinth, and specifically a best of 1, definitely has the turn 0 plays, grind game, and floodgates to win against Snake Eyes and really any other deck in the format. We will also see this a bit later in the video. Well, what's even close to the power of Labyrinth? Well, I'll tell you one thing for sure, it's not Resonator. No disrespect to Jack Atlas, Red Supernova Turbo is a personal favorite deck of mine, but the deck is pretty bad right now. The most popular engine people are jamming in is the Bystials, but the Fire format really hurts how often they're live. Not to mention, every quick effect Bystial besides Baldrake is limited, so the engine isn't very consistent for the most part. Now, the overall consistency of the deck with the non-once per turn Resonator call and the Earthbound is nice, and Crimson Gaia is one of the most forced ways they've made players want to run the original monster of an archetype, so kudos to them. I'm gonna be blunt. Kashtira is in such a weird spot. Field Spell to 1, Fenrir to 1, and Unicorn and Birth to 2. Not to mention, the pot spells they usually get to abuse are all limited, which means this deck can brick to high heaven every single game. However, it's still probably the best shifter deck in the game right now. Flu is hit even harder, and Exosister has a lower ceiling. And Arise Heart is still the single most dominant boss monster in the meta right now. If you can get to him, you can screw up all the floating effects of Poplar, Flamberge, and every other deck that has floating effects. In fact, most of the meta right now can't afford to deal with Macrocosmos, who can also lock a zone or 2. It's an instant win against Super Heavy Samurai, Tyr, Mathmech, so even if the deck is the brickiest one on the list, do not underestimate it. Also, even as hit as they are, the main deck Kashtira guys are mini boss monsters themselves and can win a grind game against almost any deck. Speaking of Flu, where does Flu rank? I would put it 1 tier below, because it has the gift above every other deck in Master Duel, the ability not to give a damn about Max Seed. Because of this, Konami has roasted these birds alive by limiting map and endpen, which has also made them quite bricky. This can be alleviated a bit with Jack in the Hand and Advent, but even those don't fully fix a hand if your opponent is smart. However, there is a card on the horizon that will give Flu its second wind in the Master Duel meta, Swallow's Cowrie, which basically is copies 3 and 6 of Advent. Somehow, someway, Fluanderies continues to survive the perilous path of nature. Oh, and if you're enjoying the vid so far, please consider liking and subscribing. We are on the path to 4K subs, and I just want to keep making great Yu-Gi-Oh content. Back to the vid. But the deck that has been surviving till the very end of time is Branded Despia. This deck has changed more than Eren Yeager and is somehow still surviving in Master Duel with Branded Fusion at 1. It's doing better than the TCG where it's at 3 and none of the other hits like Opening and Aluber. The deck has pivoted from Branded in Red and Bystials to a sort of 60 card high roll pile that is looking to draw blowout cards like Grass Looks Greener and Nadir's Servant to set up your board. And Thrust kind of works like Branded Fusion copies 2 and 3. If you get ashed, you can set Fusion Duplication and just do it on your opponent's turn. And when all else fails, just turn your brain off and put a gimmick puppet on your opponent's field. Sure beats thinking of an actual strategy. Speaking of turning your brain off, technically, if you want a relatively budget deck to climb ladder with, with, there's always Stun. Fossil Dyna or Jowgen or any other asshole plus Moon Mirror Force is usually Wraps, and Decisive Battle of Golgonda protects your field from battle or a Feather Storm, so drawing the out might not even be enough. Personally, this is the most evil deck in Master Duel, and I will judge you greatly if you play it, but I also understand that sometimes all it takes is one bad day. Vanadium is a powerful combo deck that loses to Droll, and for that reason it's going to be tier 2 because we already have a tier 1 deck that loses to Droll. Difference is it's also much less resilient as a whole compared to the next one. Mathmech also falls into this line as just a combo deck that's not the best, so it's kind of outclassed in all aspects. So what is the best combo deck that isn't Snake Eyes right now? Well, it's Super Heavy Samurai. Super Heavy Samurai is the second best Wombo combo deck available right now. Synchro combo decks are typically the strongest as they have access to the most Omni Negates in Barone, Borreload Savage Dragon, and a ton more, but this deck can go even further beyond. It's more than capable of ending on the Calamity Lock, which pretty much skips your opponent's turn. As long as this is legal, alongside their insane Link 1 and free scales, Super Heavy Samurai is going to continue to spit out every generic boss monster available until they win. It can also play through a variety of hand traps as well, and these weird-ass semi-limits Master Duel implemented didn't affect the deck at all. The deck is incredibly strong, but I do not think it's in the same tier as the best. It is still a weaker combo deck than Snake Eyes, and Droll will obliterate this deck immediately. And with Bonfire released now, Droll is going to be much better against Snake Eyes and pretty much Wraps for Super Heavy Samurai. So what is the last best deck available at Master Duel? It's Volcanic. Now, this might seem like the stupidest pick on the tier list, but hear me out, because it isn't really Volcanic. Credit to Lithium here, but it's basically Snake Eyes with a small Volcanic engine that allows them to FTK. So going first, if your opponent doesn't open enough hand traps, they will instantly lose before they have a chance to play the game. And even if they do stop the full burn, you can then just pivot to the strongest deck in the game and potentially against a 3 to 4 card hand full Snake Eyes combo. In Master Duel's best of 1 format, being able to instantly win some games will make this deck potentially even better than it was in the TCG. And this deck has even won major events, so yeah, if you got some of the Volcanic cards and one easy climb through ladder, this is the major pick. This next pick might seem a little low for how much I'm hyping it up, but I truly believe that if Snake Eyes gets hard hit, this will be the next best deck right now. But currently in high tier, it's Unchained. Unchained got all of its new support from Dune, however that was before the Snake Eyes cards came out or really any Agoth stuff. Regardless, the deck is still incredibly strong, being able to end on 2 copies of Solemn Warning, Monster Negation combined with non-targeting non-destruction removal, and to top it all off, you can link your opponent's monsters with your Unchained guys. This deck can absorb your entire field before you can establish any field presence and has the capability to play through a ton of different hand traps. I'm not sure where I'm going to put this. I'm still deciding between top tier or high tier playable, but I think I'm going to go with the bottom of top tier. These aren't ordered unless I specify it, but for this, I think it's the worst deck of top tier, but it absolutely is going to ascend because it has a bad Snake Eyes matchup. But if you want to play a trap deck and not play Labyrinth, why? Well, I won't judge you if you want to play the Dino Lady archetype because it's decently strong. Dinomorphia has always been a road to bad deck in tournaments because the time policy actively means you will lose every single match you play. But in Master Duel, there is no such thing. As a result, we can see just how strong Dinomorphia can actually be. The deck can also abuse Arias to summon Rexterm turn 0 and shut down your opponent's plays before they have a chance to establish anything. This play alone is actually insanely powerful, and if you've read Mist, turning your entire board into towers is amazing and can banish spent monsters to search for further follow-up. So the deck can play through any single card and have a very powerful grind game. Now, this is still a much worse trap deck than Labyrinth in my opinion, but it's absolutely a powerhouse that can climb to Master 1 comfortably and even maybe top events. How Tearlaments continues to stay top tier is just astounding. Several waves of bans and limits later, the deck is still strong enough to place top 10 in the Duelist Cup last month and continue to place at other events. Super Poly is one of the best removal cards in the game for any deck that can dedicate the space, and if you can get it twisted, you can still kind of end on the same original tier 0 boards you used to make. It's a skeleton of what it used to be, but that just goes to show just how it really was the greatest deck ever made by a mile, when even the slim pickings left are able to be a tier 1 deck. Tearlaments truly is the strongest. Sword Soul, while being my personal baby, is just not in the best place right now. Protoss Call Dark is very strong against Lab, but does absolutely nothing nothing against Snake Eyes really. And personally, I think Sword Soul excels well against diverse formats, where its 10 use can break through a ton of different boards. And right now, variation in Master Duel is at an all-time low, despite what this tier list is showing you. It still has a strong and consistent board, but mid-range decks as a whole have been dropping off from Yu-Gi-Oh! Except for one. For the final pick, I think Vanquish Soul is legitimately the best mid-range deck in Master Duel, with Imperm and Valor so popular against Snake Eyes, being able to dodge them by Marvel assisting your other monsters means Vanquish Soul is the most locked in it can be right now. The synergy with cards like Maxi, Kurikara, and Fenrir also give the deck a way to make their non-engine technically fulfill the requirements of their main deck cards. Being able to run Shifter is also broken as mentioned before, so this deck is an absolute great pick for the format. Now, this is my tier list for the April format going forward, but what do you think? Are there any decks that I forgot to mention, any decks you want to hear more of, or did I get this completely wrong? Please comment below what you think. Thank you all for watching. Please like and subscribe. This is BreadBoyWeeb, signing out.